How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, delighted to have you. I got to begin on the issue of free speech because the Attorney General, listen, I want to be graceful to Pam Bondi. She did sign on to a brief opposing what the left was trying to do to Jack Phillips, the baker in Colorado, but she has essentially in the last 24 hours taken the left's position in that case. And I know a lot of stress, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people coming at her. She's having to think on her feet. But this is not good stuff, what Pam Bondi has done overnight, and she's tried to walk it back. Let me play you first the two statements, one of which sounds very much like she is the British Attorney General, not the American Attorney General.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech.
With hate speech, there's you understand, please, there's no such thing as hate speech. There's just free speech in the United States. And speech is not prosecutable in the United States. And then she put up a tweet and she says hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. For far too long, we've watched the radical left normalize threats, call for assassinations, and cheer on political violence. That era is over. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 875C, it's a federal crime to transmit any communication containing any threat to kidnap any person or threat to injure the person of another. Likewise, other statutes make it a felony to threaten public officials, members of Congress, or their families. You cannot call for someone's murder. You cannot swat a member of Congress. You cannot dox a conservative family and they will be brushed off as free speech. These acts are punishable crimes, and every single threat will be met with the full force of law. Free speech protects ideas, debate, and even dissent, but it does not and will never protect violence. Now, I agree with her walk back, but that's not hate speech. Those are not hate speech. Those are actionable acts. Swatting someone, this has happened to me, is not hate speech. It's actually an action designed to cause someone harm. You actually can say someone needs to die for something, and it's not a crime in the United States. It's only a crime if your intention when you say it is you're not blowing off steam, you want it done. You can actually say that the president or members of Congress should be shot or whatnot if you're blowing off steam, not if you actually want them to be shot. It's all a matter of intent, and that's not hate speech. If you're sitting on your front porch and you watch, I don't know, the kicker for your favorite college football team in his orange jersey miss a 20-yard field goal that could have won the game against the University of Georgia, and you say that guy needs to be shot, that's not a crime. It's not a crime. You do understand that, don't you? And it's not hate speech. There's no such thing under American law as hate speech. And Pam Bondi now twice in this interview and online says there's hate speech. There's hate speech in Great Britain. And American conservatives have been railing against what's happening in Great Britain, where people are going to jail for saying things that the government decides are hateful. She's absolutely right. You can't dox somebody in this country. You can't incite people to go kill another person. You yourself can't declare you're going to kill that person with the intent to kill that person. But the Supreme Court has ruled it is legal to celebrate violence or advocate, but it's not imminent violence. There is a difference between imminent violence and threats to harm and what you're saying. Now, for those of you who think, Erickson, you don't even know what you're talking about, that's the Attorney General of the United States. I was a First Amendment lawyer. I represented TV stations and radio stations when I practiced law. I'm also a talk radio show host. I can assure you I know exactly what the laws on speech are in the United States, and there's no such thing as hate speech. But it goes beyond that. This is what she also said on Fox News last night, and this is problematic too.
Well, sure, we all believe in the First Amendment, and these people speak horrible things. I think yesterday or today, Sean, a school board member right here in Virginia had to resign because she said horrible things about Charlie Kirk and that he deserved to die. That's horrific. It's free speech, but you shouldn't be employed anywhere if you're going to say that. And employers, you have an obligation to get rid of people. You need to look at people who are saying horrible things, and they shouldn't be working with you. Businesses cannot discriminate. If you want to go in and print posters with Charlie's pictures on them for a vigil, you have to let them do that. We can prosecute you for that.
No. You can't be prosecuted for that. That's you. You guys understand this, right? If the government can prosecute a print shop because it didn't want to print flyers for for a rally to honor Charlie Kirk, then Jack Phillips, the baker who didn't want to bake the transgender birthday cake, can be prosecuted for not doing that. This is how does the Attorney General of the United States for a Republican administration not know this? Particularly when Pam Bondi actually signed a brief in defense of Jack Phillips. This is a dangerous, dangerous game that Pam Bondi is playing with this. And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who, when it was their side targeted, when the left was coming for us, in our words, they were very much free speech absolutists. But now that it's people on the left who can be targeted, people are like, yeah, screw it. Let's go after them and prosecute them. I want to tell you where I am on this because I have spent a lot of time thinking about this because I consider myself fairly well a free speech absolutist. If you want to stand up and say awful, awful, awful things about me, about Charlie Kirk, about the President of the United States, about Jesus Christ, about Muhammad, go for it. You have that right under the First Amendment. Your right to say those things, however, does not mean there won't be consequences in your job or life. That is true. But the government should not be able to prosecute you. Generally, I think anybody should be able to stand up and say awful things about another person and not lose their job. I actually think that some of the people who have lost their jobs for saying Charlie Kirk was an awful person and dancing on his grave, I don't think they should have lost their jobs. However, where I do think you should lose your job is when you go the next step. You're not just dancing on Charlie Kirk's grave and saying he was a horrible person who said horrible things, many of which you're taking out of context. You're saying, so he deserved to die. There are things in a civil society that we must make outcasts from civil society. And the number one overarching thing we must make a pariah in this country is the justification of, defense of, or sanctioning of the death of any American for what they have said politically. Doesn't matter what side they're on. There are people on the left. I do not like them. I don't like what they stand for. I don't like what they say. I don't like what they believe. I think they are wrong. Some of them, I dare say, are evil. Not a single one of them should be executed for what they say, stand for, believe, anything like that. Not a single one. And that should be a foundational belief in this country. You do not get to decide someone should die, and no one in this country should die because of their political beliefs. That should be foundational. So I've seen professionals, teachers and doctors and others lose their jobs because they went on social media and they said Charlie Kirk was a horrible human being. Charlie Kirk was a misogynist. He was a racist. He was some of them called him an anti-Semite. He was whatever. And I don't think those people should lose their jobs. Now, that's between them and their employer, though. However, I have seen doctors and I have seen teachers and I have seen members of the military. I have seen a Secret Service agent. I have seen nurses. I have seen, in one case, an electrician. I have seen local TV hosts and others go on social media and say, Charlie Kirk got what he deserved. Violence met with violence. What did you think was going to happen? Those people should lose their job. You got to understand the nuance here. Believe every bad thing you want to believe and be free to say whatever you want to say about me, Charlie Kirk, Jesus Christ, I don't care. But the moment you say he got what he deserved to die, he should have been shot, I'd have made him suffer, you deserve to be fired from your job. In none of those cases do you deserve to be prosecuted because it's your free speech right. There's got to be accountability in society, though, for any American who thinks another American deserves death for their political views, because no American, no matter how abhorrent you think their ideas are, deserves death for their views. That's got to be foundational in a civil society. I'm trying to be graceful to the Attorney General because she's under a lot of pressure. You've got the situation now with Charlie Kirk. She was a friend of his, but it's not helpful for the Attorney General to embrace the idea that there is hate speech in the country, because there's not. And conservatives, people on the right, populists, this will be turned on you the moment a Democrats take back power. If you embrace the idea there is hate speech, it will be used against you. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman because I'm an evangelical Christian. I believe transgenderism is mental illness. To the left, that's hate speech. If I want to call Elliot Page Ellen Page, I should have the right to do that. To the left, that's dead naming and that's violence. That's literal. In the idea of the left is that it's literal violence for me to say Caitlyn Jenner is Bruce Jenner or Elliot Page is Ellen Page. No, that's actually violence to them. It goes beyond hate speech. If you go down this path where you believe there's hate speech, it will be turned against you. In the same way, if you believe a business should be put out of business or prosecuted by the government for violating rights because the business says, I don't want to do business with you, it will be turned against the Christian butcher and the baker and the photographer. And before you say, but it has, Erickson, it has, the Supreme Court has stopped that. Jack Phillips still has his bakery shop because Jack Phillips went to the Supreme Court and fought. And precedent has been set. And it should not be those of us on the right changing the precedent. This is very basic, elementary stuff. And again, no one should be prosecuted for these things. I do think, listen, I would not want my kids in the classroom of a teacher who said horrible things about Charlie Kirk after he died if she danced was great. I kind of see the argument for firing that person. There are limits in the private sector to your ability to engage in free speech. My position is I don't want my kid in that person's classroom, but I don't really want anyone fired for saying something I really disagree with. But when that teacher then says he deserved to die, you fire that person. We're not going to agree on a lot as a society anymore. We're too divided. Every single one of us should agree no person deserves to die because of their political views. And unfortunately, there are people on the left who have been very open that they're okay with this assassination because they didn't like Charlie Kirk. And they've been very public on social media, and I think society should shun people like that. Fundamentally believe society should shun people, shame people, teach them a sense of shame, and put them on the unemployment line if they're cheering on an assassination over political views. Because if we don't shun it, if we don't shame it, if we don't as a society come together and say this is unacceptable, it's only going to fester more. What you say to your friends in private is a separate thing. If you got on a group chat of your best friends and said, got what he deserved, and one of your friends leaked it out to the press, I would go after the friend, not after you, because you thought you could say something quietly and safely in your circle of friends, and one of your friends betrayed that trust. It's when you go on Facebook and you go on Twitter and you go on Snapchat and you go on TikTok and you go on Instagram for the entire world to see. And you say, got what he deserved, more of this, please. Society needs to step in and say, no. But in none of these cases should the federal government decide it's prosecutable. Because if the federal government decides this is prosecutable against the left, they're setting the precedent that will be used to come after you and me with the next Democrat. And by the way, the Supreme Court has said you can't do this. The Attorney General of the United States should at least know that's the law of the land. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. I don't know who Valerie is. Valerie Lewis, it looks like, on TikTok. I'm not going to give her user account. Let me describe what she did. She turned on her recorder, her video recorder on her phone in the parking lot of a Starbucks. Went in through the door, went up to the cash register, held her phone in the face of the cashier, and told the cashier to write Charlie Kirk on the woman's coffee cup. And the girl very politely says, no, that would be a political message. Who's in the wrong here? Y'all, I'm sorry, but the bad guy in this is Valerie, not the Starbucks employee. And you've now got a mob on social media coming for this girl. This was a setup. This woman intended to go in and be provocative. She intended to do this. She intended to get her 5 minutes of fame, causing pain to someone else, because she wanted to use Charlie Kirk's name to get an employee at Starbucks in trouble if they wouldn't write it on the cup. I'm sorry here, but you need to understand that the employee is not the bad guy in this video, and Valerie is the bad guy in this video for trying to do something like that. And shame on her for trying to get the Starbucks employee into a situation where the employee was not comfortable. That's not what you should be doing in response right now. Valerie is bad. Now, let me tell you about Americans for Prosperity. They would love to have you on their side. They are big advocates of freedom and big advocates of common sense conservative reform, and they would love to have you on their side. All you got to do is go to afpvolunteer.com. But more importantly, right now, they want everybody, including Valerie, to take one step for freedom in their community. And if 250,000 of us do, well, we've got 250,000 steps for freedom in this country. And I personally think that each of us should be committed to taking a step for freedom. You can find out more and how you can participate at afpvolunteer.com. That's afpvolunteer.com. Join Americans for Prosperity. Take a step for freedom in this country. One small step for freedom in this country. Each of us doing it, we can meaningfully impact the future of this country and get us back to the founder's vision. afpvolunteer.com. Go check them out today. Greetings. The phone number 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, don't forget to text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. I'll get to phone calls here in a minute, but I need to say something and bring you up to speed on something that's happening in New York City. Progressives are outside the courthouse where Luigi Mangione is having a hearing. And a judge there in New York has thrown out terrorism charges against Mangione. The crowd went wild. They're holding up signs supporting Mangione. Progressives are rooting for a man who murdered the CEO of an insurance company, leaving behind his wife and kids. Mangione is the one who wrote on the shell casings, undoubtedly inspiring Tyler Robinson to do the same when he assassinated Charlie Kirk. Mangione is not the hero of the story, and yet for some on the left, he's become the hero of the story, and they're cheering him on. Now, you should know I agree with the judge's decision. They Oftentimes, prosecutors overcharge individuals, and judges throw out some of the charges. I have read the New York statutes on the terrorism charges, and they really did not fit. And I think the judge is right in his decision that terrorism doesn't really cover one's passionate domestic political views on things like that. There wasn't really an agenda-driven, fear-driven stuff here. He hated the insurance CEO and wanted to shoot him. He's being charged. The charges for murder aren't being dismissed. And there are some people online who thought the judge threw out the murder charges. That's not it at all. There were some related terrorism charges, and I don't think they fit based on the plain reading of the New York statute that allows those terrorism charges. So I think the judge got it right. But what's wild to me is the crowd cheering that somehow Mangione's been benefited. He's still going to either go to jail for life or get the death penalty for what he did if he's found guilty. But the left is out cheering this. Now, this comes on top of a YouGov survey. 25% of Americans who identify as very progressive believe that violence can be used against political opponents. 25%. What's really startling in the numbers is the younger you go, the more violent it is. Most Americans say it's unacceptable to be happy about a public figure's deaths, but younger and more liberal Americans are more likely to call it acceptable. 24% of very liberal people say, and by the way, 20% say they're not sure. Can you be happy about a public figure's death? 25% of very liberal people, and by the way, 14% say they're not sure, so 39% totally. Oh, and 6% prefer not to say. 6% prefer not to say. Most Americans across the political spectrum say political violence is never justified, but more liberal Americans are more likely to disagree. So 25% of liberals, of very liberal people, say it is acceptable, political violence is justified. 6% say they don't want to say how they would answer the question. That in and of itself is telling. And by the way, for conservatives, just so you understand, it's like 3%. For people who are listed as very conservative, 3% say political violence is justified. This is a warning sign that the violence we're seeing coming in society right now, so much is from the left. And the left is working overtime to try to deny there's violence on their side. Heather Cox Richardson is one of the most widely read Substack writers in the country. She's the other day declared that Tyler Robinson, Charlie Kirk's assassin, was from the right. It's not true, but her readers will be told he's from the right, and they'll believe her. CBS News last night interviewed a guy from a think tank who tried to say that Tyler Robinson's views are actually nihilistic violence. It's not actually politically motivated. It's just nihilistic violence. You got that? They're not going to say he's on the right, but they're not going to say he's on the left. He's just nihilistic. He just wanted to cause violence. That's it. By the way, the same expert has in the past tried to get the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's website, censored for being extremist. They can't bring themselves to acknowledge the festering bad things happening on the left. On the left, you are told you have less than 10 years before this planet goes away unless you do something. On the left, you are told that the Nazis are in charge and we're going to have an authoritarian dictatorship if somebody doesn't stop Donald Trump. On the left, we are told words are violence and can be responded to with violence. There's a festering darkness on the left, and the best the media can do is say, well, it's happening on the right too. But no one on the right attempted to assassinate Donald Trump, and no one on the right attempted to assassinate Charlie Kirk. And people on the left in the media are overwhelmingly insistent that actually, yes, it was someone on the right. And here's the thing. Forget about Tyler Robinson's ideological motivations. You know what? Forget about the shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania, and his ideological motivations. It just happens to be that all the people cheering it on are on the left. And that in and of itself is a problem. Again, say whatever you want to say. I don't think you should be prosecuted for it. But we live in very, very dangerous times when the more liberal you are in this country, the more comfortable you are saying violence is a solution. You have Democratic members of Congress telling Axios, the website, that they live in fear of their constituents. One member of Congress on background told Axios that the problem right now is that the Democratic base wants blood. And he meant literal blood. And the Democrats aren't brave enough to stand up to their base. The media is not brave enough to stand up to their audience. And the violence continues to fester such that you now have liberals standing outside a courthouse in New York City cheering on a murderer who murdered a husband and father because they don't like insurance companies. This is a dangerous sign for the future of the Democratic Party. Phone number 877-973-7425. Let's go over to Montgomery, Alabama. Chad's listening. Welcome back, Chad. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Eric? How you doing?
Good. So what do you think about this free speech stuff?
Well, Pam Bondi never fails to disappoint. If there were a trophy for unmet expectations, she'd probably forget to pick it up.
Probably.
I'm still waiting on the Epstein list that's on her desk, which we've never gotten. Yeah, I'm of the Scalia view, and I think you are too. And that is free speech is pretty much absolute unless you're advocating immediate violent actions that you can absolutely carry out, right then and there. We have cases clearly out of the Supreme Court that allow all kind of hate speech, race, sex, national origin, all that kind of stuff. I always liked Scalia's quote that he had in the flag burning case that was out of Texas. You'll probably remember the Texas versus Johnson case back in like 1989. He said, if it was up to me, I would put every sandal-wearing, scruffy-bearded weirdo in jail who burns the American flag, but I'm not the king. We have a First Amendment which states that the right to free speech shall not be abridged, and it is addressed in particular to speech critical of our government. I can't believe we have an attorney general literally going out there, a Republican attorney general going out there and even using the term hate speech. Now, that doesn't mean private businesses can't fire people who make comments like that are inconsistent with their values as a business. That happens all the time. I recommend the employers fire people all the time unless they are, of course, challenging the terms and conditions of their jobs, which they're protected to do under the Federal Labor Standards Act. But if you're out there making nasty comments, showing porn of yourself, anything else that could reflect poorly on your business, and you're in a right-to-work state like we are in Alabama, like you are in Georgia, you can fire them, right? But that's different than the government going after them and the government prosecuting them. And to hear her say that we're going to come after you if you make a negative comment toward Charlie Kirk, and I love Charlie Kirk. I thought he was fantastic. I'm just heartbroken at what happened to him. But the free speech is not worth protecting if you're not willing to protect speech you disagree with. That's the bottom line.
Amen. Look, well said. And back to your point, if I were to, and I wouldn't, but if I on this microphone were to utter the N-word, I would be fired before the next commercial break. But I couldn't be prosecuted for it. And this idea that we're going to prosecute people over saying things we don't like, it's abhorrent to the American system. And by the way, Charlie Kirk himself about a year ago gave a big speech in defense of the First Amendment and said you should not be punished by the government for saying things people in government don't like.
Well, I'll say this, Eric. If when the Democrats get back into power, and someday they will, they're definitely going to use Pam Bondi's words against us.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that I fear the most, because they do think you should be prosecuted for hate speech and speech that they disagree with. And how they define hate speech is anybody who's a Christian that opposes, gay marriage, or thinks that the transgender thing's not a real thing, or that it's mental illness. They'll come after us. They'll come after us. I mean, you already have states where you cannot have any type of transition therapy or detransition therapy. That's a speech issue to me. It always has been a speech issue.
Yeah,
to me,
isn't there a case this coming year in the Supreme Court about that very issue?
Yeah, I believe there is one that's scheduled. I don't know if it's been docketed for oral arguments yet, but
I think it has. I seem to recall it's scheduled for, I think, December. I think it's out of Colorado. Chad, look, I appreciate the phone call. Yeah, there's Colorado banned therapy related to gender transitions, and a Christian therapist filed a lawsuit, and it's made its way to the Supreme Court. I believe it's scheduled for argument in December. But they've taken the case, which is good. Spencer, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show, Spencer. How are you?
Good, Eric. It's nice to talk to you again. So my question kind of piggybacks off of what the last person that you had on just said. This kind of goes down the line of free speech and what might not be. So I was watching on Fox. They were showing clips of this most recent thing that Ilhan Omar said, and it just got me thinking, because we've been listening to her rhetoric for a while now, but she's in kind of a different position than your average person who's making comments. And do you think that there should be some form of like a universal code of conduct that people who want to serve in Congress have to, be held to? Because I just don't see, how does it make any sense that we have people that are supposed to be U.S. representatives and they're making anti-American comments, anti-Western culture comments. And I mean, like, imagine, for example, if Marco Rubio was going around saying stuff like Ilhan Omar. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. And I mean, we hold other people and other branches of government to different standards. Like, I'm pretty sure if you were serving in the military and you were on deployment and you got caught posting death to America, your CO would probably pull you off and have something to say to you. So if we hold them accountable for saying that kind of.
Here's the thing, and for those of you who don't know, well, first of all, Ilhan Omar did come out and condemn the killing and said it was reprehensible and offered prayers for her family. But then she started circulating tweets of other people, including one that called Charlie Kirk a stochastic terrorist with his last dying words spewing racist dog whistles and things like that. The problem is that the standards there can't really be one universal standard, because the people in Ilhan Omar's district are different from the people in your district, Spencer, to the different people in my district. And she was elected by those people. And so those people are the ones who have to hold her accountable. Now, I will say this. The Democrats set a precedent by booting Marjorie Taylor Greene off certain committees for her words. The same could be said against Ilhan Omar, but you can't boot her out of Congress because she was elected by those people to represent those people. And you're not going to get the 2/3 vote to do it. I think what Ilhan Omar did was reprehensible, but she's also a member of Congress. I'll tell you what I also think is reprehensible is she's being targeted by Nancy Mace, introducing a measure that would kick Ilhan Omar off of several committees. Nancy Mace went to the floor of the House, taking advantage of the speech and debate clause, and smeared 3 men in South Carolina to try to advance her political career for governor there, including attacking the current Attorney General of South Carolina with things that everyone denies are true. But she took advantage of the fact that she can say whatever she wants to say and slander whoever she wants to slander, and she can't be sued for doing it on the floor of the House. So maybe someone with clean hands should be the one to go after Ilhan Omar instead of Nancy Mace. But again, just like in Ilhan Omar's case, it's going to be the voters of South Carolina who have to do something, not you or me. Pretty big national news out of the state of Georgia just a short time ago. The Georgia Supreme Court has refused to take an appeal from Fani Willis. Fani Willis, of course, led the RICO case against Donald Trump and a bunch of other defendants, 16 others. The case went up on appeal to the Georgia Court of Appeals that disqualified Fani Willis. The Supreme Court was asked to review the appellate court's case. They said no, so Fani Willis is disqualified from prosecuting the case. The case will now have to go to the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia to see if they assign it to a new prosecutor to continue it. However, Fani Willis was disqualified earlier from the investigation to the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Burt Jones. She claimed he was also a part of this, but she did a fundraiser for his political appointment, and the courts threw her off that case. And that was sent to the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, who decided there was no there and dismissed that case. So if they decided there was no there against Burt Jones, there's no there against these other 16 people, and the whole case should be thrown out. Feel sorry for those who decided they couldn't afford the legal bills, and so they settled the cases and pled to felonies and misdemeanors and the like. Had they been able to stick with it, their records would be clear like these other people. There's going to be no prosecution here. Fani Willis has completely lost her credibility, and the taxpayers of Fulton County, Georgia, paid a lot of money for a case that went to nowhere and now won't go anywhere at all. Now, I want you to go get the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them, EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code ERIC, ERICK, the number 3, no space, ERIC3. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm, it's small, it's portable. You can hold it in your hand. You can plug it in with a USB cord to your computer, to a car outlet, and power it up. I've done that in a car before. You can plug it directly into the wall as well. It generates plasma, which kills 99.9% of bacteria and viruses that flow through the machine. It gets rid of the dirt, the pollen, the dust that flows through the machine, and then it generates ozone that goes out into the environment and wipes out every odor. You name it, litter box odors, dirty diaper odors, smoke odors, cooking odors, the odors from a rental car where someone smoked in the car before you got there. That's happened to me. Wipes out those odors too. EdenPureDeals.com, the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com.